The WWE was still the best brand in pro wrestling of the week, but the WWE does have a lot of problems, and we're going to go over the pros and cons in the WWE today. There is the potential for AEW to once again kind of surpass the WWE when it comes to a quality product, but AEW has a lot of work to put in. But the WWE is dropping the ball in some regards, many regards, honestly, in my opinion, since WrestleMania, and a lot of it was starting before WrestleMania as well. First things first, we got to talk about the lousy draft. I talked about it before it happened on this channel a little bit, how I liked the potential of where we're going. We're going to have two main titles again, and if the WWE would actually give us two different brands with two different titles, make both brands seem kind of different, have both brands have their own rosters, like the early and mid 2000s, once again, I was interested in seeing that happen. But from the moment the draft started, they already ruined that by giving us free agents. First of all, just shows how out of touch the WWE is when it comes to real sports, because to be a free agent in sports means you're nowhere. It doesn't mean you're on both shows. It doesn't mean you're on two different teams. It means you're nowhere. No team has picked you up. So their use of free agent, where Lesnar's a free agent and Omos is a free agent and Dolph Ziggler for no reason whatsoever is a free agent, and they can appear on both Raw and SmackDown, that's stupid. That's not a free agent. A free agent means you're nowhere. A free agent means nobody has signed you, now that you could appear on any team. And then they start the tournament for the new WWE World title, and it's both Raw and SmackDown. It's supposed to be a Raw title, but the tournament's on both Raw and SmackDown, and it's already the brands colliding, and you're already ruining the supposed draft split. So the question is, why even do the draft in the first place, especially because ratings were up a little, and ticket sales are through the roof, and things were going very well. So why are you acting like you're splitting the brand in the first place? If everything was working and you have everybody on one show, then you might as well have just kept one title in the first place. It's just nonsensical. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it has made me far less excited about the rest of the year in the WWE. And then after seeing Raw, which we'll get to here in a while, Raw was such a bad show and not doing any favors to the draft. But before we get to Raw, let's talk about Backlash. Backlash was great. WWE being in Puerto Rico was great. It was everything that we needed after a lousy draft, honestly. The crowds were great. The event, the Backlash event, was great. Probably overrated by a lot. I feel like, the WWE hardcore fans are trying to rest on the laurels of loud crowds because they just went on this tour of Europe and had great crowds. Then they go to Puerto Rico and have a great crowds. And so the WWE hardcore fans on social media want to act like just because the crowd was great, the shows were great. And it was a good show. Backlash was a good show, but calling it the best show of the year, it's just not true. At least it wasn't as good as WrestleMania Night 1. It just wasn't. If you want to say Backlash was better as WrestleMania Night 1 and 2 as a whole, that argument could be made. But Night 1 of WrestleMania by itself was way better than Backlash was. And Backlash was still a good show. It kicked off with a great match. Bianca Belair versus Io Sky. In my opinion, where I will differ with the social media crowd, and Twitter's never right anyway, so listening to Twitter is like burning money. If you're going to listen to Twitter opinions and go with those opinions, you might as well just burn money while you're at it. The best women's wrestling match of the year was Bianca Belair versus Io Sky. And why is that? Because it told the story it needed to tell. And when the crowd turned on Bianca in that match, she started working as a heel, and it was great. And in the future, when Belair turns heel someday, it's going to be spectacular. Even though Bianca is already far and above better than any other woman in women's wrestling right now. She's on another level than anybody. I don't give a crap what anybody else says. She, in every single pay-per-view match, premium live event, whatever it's called. In every single pay-per-view match that Bianca Belair is in since she won the title, she tells a story in those matches. And I know everybody wants to overhype the Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair match at WrestleMania, or at least that's what Twitter wants to do. And why do they want to do that? It's because according to modern wrestling fans, and yes, this is a very old school channel, but old school wrestling sold so well for a reason, and that's the reason why it's still talked about and popular today. That's the reason why 80s and 90s wrestling is still talked about more than any other era of wrestling to this day. It's because old school wrestling had it right when it came to telling stories in the ring and having personas and putting your personas in wrestling matches. And it's something that Belair does so well. Always the champion who uses her power like she should, because that is what she is as a wrestler, a powerful wrestler. The strongest, if you will. And Io getting a bunch of close falls to make it exciting was great. But it didn't need too many kickouts to accomplish that. But, Rhea and Charlotte went the indie wrestling route of having 5 too many kickouts by the end of that match. And I was there live, and let me tell you, a fourth of the audience just wanted the match to end. When there's so many kickouts in the match, it gets to a point where it's like, why isn't this over already? This is stupid. It happened in that match. So yeah, I get it. Twitter wants to hype indie wrestling style, but it doesn't appeal to the masses. But what Belair does is appealing to the masses because she constantly tells stories in her matches. And, I don't want to take away from Rhea and Charlotte at WrestleMania because it was a good match, but it fell into the indie wrestling trap of having too many kickouts by the end of it. And, Rhea is supposed to be the heel in that match, and Charlotte's supposed to be a face, and I've went on for months about how Charlotte's a terrible face, and that match proved it. And I know I'm saying that in Belair's match she had to work as a heel and she did it well, but I've yet to see a match where Charlotte works great as a babyface. Of course, probably the best match of the night, that it's because it had a lot of sports entertainment to it, had to be Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest. And that's because, we got a bunch of pops from the crowd in that match. We have Carlito returning, Savio Vega coming out. So that match had pop after pop from the crowd. And that's what I mean when I talk about, the crowds do make events better. But acting like this was the best event just because the crowd was so hot, it just doesn't compute for me. I want to see matches that make sense and matches that have the right amount of stakes. Backlash was still a good show. I'd give it a solid B, but I don't know if it was an A show. There was some downer matches. Rhea basically squashing Vega. It was the right call for Rhea's character, but then to follow it up on Raw where Rhea's going to be facing Natalya, I just don't understand why Triple H is booking this way with the women. Natalya hasn't been relevant in years, and it's because the WWE has started and stopped her. Started and stopped her momentum, started and stopped her character, started and stopped anything for Natalya. So why are we supposed to care about Rhea and Natalya all of a sudden? Just because there's a brand split? The brand split's not even real! So I have a lot of frustrations with the WWE. I do. A lot of it has to do with the brand split already not being a real brand split. And now I'm supposed to care about this WWE World title, and I really don't, especially if Seth Rollins wins the title. I don't know if that's just because it's the boring choice to me or what, but it's just not going to work for me. I still need more for the women's division as well. Bianca can tell all the stories she wants in the ring, and that's why it's such a great feat from her, in my opinion, is because Triple H hasn't put that much effort into Bianca's stories going into matches, and yet she pulls off the stories in the matches. Imagine if you would actually build Belair's matches well again, like Vince McMahon used to when he was booking, what Bianca could actually accomplish. Hopefully, we can actually get some of that on SmackDown. But over on Raw this past week, it's why AEW has a chance to once again surpass WWE in my eyes creatively. A lot of work will have to be put into that because AEW has a lot of problems of their own to get through. But the WWE, this tournaments don't sell anyway. They make for boring wrestling episodes. So that didn't work. Everybody and their mother saw that Brock Lesnar was going to cost Cody this tournament, which is exactly what happened. They gave away Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus Imperium for free on TV, where Imperium already loses to them. So why do we care if those two are going to get into a feud with the tag champions? That was dumb. Basically, Raw felt like nothing changed. That's the problem with this draft. It felt like nothing changed. Miz is still the Miz, jobbing. All the people you expected to win won. Zoe Stark gets her debut from NXT, beats Nikki Cross. Triple H is obviously high on Zoe Stark, but she's a heel, and I don't really think Raw has enough good babyface women to build up. And then, just like everybody and their mother saw that Cody was going to get screwed by Brock, everybody and their mother knew that Seth Rollins was going to win the Raw side of the tournament. And that's why it's just becoming a little too predictable for me. I don't like what I saw from Raw. I don't like what I'm seeing from this draft. So in the short term, Backlash and the SmackDown from Puerto Rico were good TV and a good event. But in the long term, I don't like what we're going to be seeing from the draft. I don't think that they're going to be getting this right. So far, I think we're in for a few months of growing pains. But the biggest problem, I just don't think the Bloodline story is going to be good anymore. I think the Bloodline story falls out of a top 10 pro wrestling storyline of all time. I think it has fallen out of that now. I talked about it when it was getting so hot and good that just like soap operas, I didn't want the WWE to drag out a story way too long and not have the right idea of where to go. And that's exactly what happened. Roman Reigns winning at WrestleMania would have been fine if he wouldn't have been off TV for over a month after WrestleMania. It would have been fine because we still would have had a storyline possibly to progress. But instead, Roman is off of TV for a month, and the Bloodline story is doing the same thing we've been seeing for months between Sami Zayn and Jey Uso, and now they're on separate brands, and so we're just going to have months of this story spinning its wheels where there's going to be, dissension in the Bloodline and problems in the Bloodline. But at this point, who cares? I don't think I care. That's the problem when somebody is off of TV for so long. It's why AEW stories struggle and why them hiring the Washington guy is a good thing if he could pull it off and getting consistency on TV, because that's the only way to consistently get things over. Roman being off of TV for over a month, the story's cold again. It's going to get stale again just like it did last year before Sami Zayn. So what is the WWE going to do to make it compelling again? It's not that they can't do something, but it's that if the story is going to spin its wheels for the next 2 to 3 months, we're all going to be over it by that point, I fear. I fear we're all going to be over it by then. And that's why I talked about in the Impact video this week, them never bringing the women into this story is a disaster for the story. I said this 2 years ago on my other channel, I feel like, or I don't know if it was 2 years ago, but like a year and a half ago, that them not bringing Naomi into the Bloodline storyline in the first place was a fail. It was a fail. You would have added more layers to the story. Jimmy and Naomi are married in real life. You could have had a year of building up to this moment now where Roman's gone and Naomi and Jimmy could have been, furthering their story along instead of it just being Jay and Sammy for the 20th time over the past several months now. Instead of just seeing the same thing over and over and over. And it's good that the WWE will let their storylines breathe, but they've kind of suffocated the storyline with Roman being off of television. And they're missing the layers that they could have had with Naomi or Tamina being involved in the story. They're missing the layers, and I fear the Bloodline story is no longer going to be good again. It's certainly stale again. And they fixed it the first time with Sami Zayn, but what's going to be the fix this time? I'm not sure if they have one. So for now, the WWE still the top dog in pro wrestling right now. But for the first time in almost a year, I see the potential for somebody to overtake the WWE creatively and make for a better product. Will AEW be able to do it? The potential's there again, but there's a lot of work to be done.